What is crackin', everybody? It's MegapiemanPHD here, and welcome to another Jumpstart developer interview. Today I'll be talking with Bryce Kho of Guts Department for their Kickstarter of Aegis Defenders, a mix of a platform game with a tower defense game. How are you doing today, Bryce?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is you do at Guts Department?
Cool. So I am the game director at Guts Department, and I also do all of the art, story, and design.
So you wear many hats at Guts Department.
Yeah. In terms of the game development, it's really just myself and our lead engineer, Leifu Lin, working on the game. We do have about 4 other team members, but they're mostly working on helping us with the Kickstarter campaign. So, once it's over, it's just going to be me and him roughing it out.
So, what exactly is Aegis Defenders?
So, like you said, Aegis Defenders is a combination of a Metroidvania action-adventure with tower defense combat. And it's a pretty unique take on those genres and also kind of a weird mashup between the two. But we just kind of experimented with it, and we think it's really fun.
How much money are you guys actually looking to raise for your overall Kickstarter?
So we're looking for 65K, and right now we're sitting at about 63. So
you're doing pretty well.
That it doesn't just stop.
Now, you do have a demo available for your game, which is always nice to see, and I did play through that, and I absolutely loved what you guys were trying to do. I've seen a couple games try to mix platform and tower defense. None of them were really able to get that mix super fantastically done, but I think you guys have a very good shot at it. About how representative do you think the demo will be to the actual fully finished game, or is it still very, very early in production?
I'd say it's definitely, past the halfway mark in terms of the core features that we want in there. And that there's a few key systems that we think are going to change. For example, right now, both characters share a life bar, basically. We think it's going to be more interesting if, rather than a life bar, they can just get knocked out if they take too much damage, and that the other character then needs to revive their partner. One of the things that we have in our game is kind of like a single player co-op where you're playing as multiple characters at the same time. So we think that's going to change the game balance a lot, but also add a mechanic that is going to be pretty unique but also makes sense.
Now, single-player co-op is also something that has been tried in the past, most recently with a game like Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, which has become popular with that kind of a thing. Were you kind of inspired by that idea to have two players that your player actually has to control at the same time, or did you come up with that on your own?
Yeah, we actually came up with it on our own, and then we heard from a lot of other people that it reminded them of Lost Vikings on the Super Nintendo. So, I guess kind of like-minded individuals coming together. The idea to me was inspired when I just heard an interview with Super Time Force, and they were talking about the idea of single-player co-op and playing with yourself by yourself, which sounded really funny. The idea of that is where we came to it. Yeah.
So both of the characters within your game have their own traits to them, and they do their own things. Would you mind going over exactly who we'll be playing as and what their main role is within the game?
Cool, yeah. So right now, our game is featuring Bart and Clu. Bart's like an engineer, and he can build a variety of different structures that you kind of would associate with a traditional tower defense game, like just actual walls and different weapons. But he can also build different drones, which we're calling Kobo, and that's from the word kobold, which means companion. And he can build these drones that will have different special abilities, like being kamikazes or scouts, or just different melee things. So he actually can choose any one of those kind of skill tree paths to really customize and emphasize. And then our other character that we have right now, her name is Clu, and she's more of a gunner / hunter, and she can wield a variety of different firearms that will all have their own kind of unique fire rate and way to kind of maximize how much damage you do, as well as planting different traps that kind of offer another type of utility, so like slow traps or traps that explode. And that's just this beginning, you know.
Right. One thing I noticed while I was playing the demo is that, unlike other tower defense games, there isn't a way to actually upgrade your towers. You actually have to build better towers later on. You went over this a little bit, talking about how you might be able to upgrade your specific characters. Is it more going to be focused on that and how you get better equipment and get better towers moving forward? Or will you eventually have something where you can actually upgrade your towers to make them more powerful throughout the game?
Yeah, so that's something we've been playing with a lot internally on which is more fun in terms of like the balance and like when you lose a turret and whatnot. So we're definitely prototyping both versions of that type of game and really still kind of seeing which one wins out for us, like in terms of fun factor.
One of the things that I actually really liked about the demo is the fact that when you play as the turret builder, the other character, she will actually attack enemies on her own. She has a little bit of her own AI. She won't move around, but she will actually try to do a little bit of cover. But when you play as the gunner character, unfortunately, your turret guy, he doesn't actually really do anything from what I've seen. Is there any idea to implement some sort of AI with him as well? So that, I know he's mostly melee-based, so he may not be super great to just stick him in front of a bunch of enemies and hope for the best. But do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, that's the critique we've had from like day one, is that we just never implemented his passive. But we actually did very recently. So I think the build that you played probably might be like, you know, a week old or something. But we've had his passive. We just didn't really kind of like it yet. But now we think it's in a pretty good place. Basically, he can repair, you know, nearby structures, and if an enemy is nearby, he will swing his hammer at them. But like you said, that's not really the smartest idea because his like attack rate isn't very fast.
So towers, of course, the game is tower defense, and towers are very important. About how much variety and how many towers do you think you guys will have at the end of the final product?
That's an interesting question. I think right now we're looking at 5 major types of towers. But one of the things that I think we should emphasize is that even though our game has a lot of, you know, tower defense combat in it, you know, just defending something, we actually kind of think of that as just the base, like just the start. And a lot of the scenarios that you see in our trailer kind of take that whole tower defense setup and kind of turn it on its head. So, for example, the blob boss that you see at the very end of our trailer, it's you know, it's about killing this one huge enemy who's kind of eating the hovercraft train that you're on. So that hovercraft train kind of starts really long, and then it gets shorter and shorter as he gets closer and closer because he's like eating these this ground that you have, and that also plays in with the tower defense because he's throwing more enemies onto that hovercraft vehicle. So it's like, it's tower defense, but it's also kind of like in such a unique scenario where you can pilot this hovercraft and the hovercraft is getting smaller and all these other dynamic things that we don't think it feels like a traditional tower defense at that point.
It'll definitely be interesting to see a boss based on the blob monsters, because those things I found to be a bit of a pain to have to get used to, since in the main game, I was very surprised to find that they will actually eat my towers and not actually give me any resources back. So they can be very difficult to deal with on their own. So it'll be interesting to see how a larger one will be to fight against.
Yeah, definitely. He's definitely the most infuriating character that we have right now.
You guys really do have a good variety of enemies to deal with. You have a good amount of basic enemies, multiple types. You also have your special enemy like the blob guy and flying enemies. What kind of a variety could we get for enemies, and about how many enemies do you think that you will have towards the finished product?
Well, right now we have kind of a list of the types of enemies that we want and what their special abilities are going to be, and I think that's around 20 right now. Probably going to add more, but those are kind of like the sort of base challenges that we'll match it against the different like weapons that we have designed for the player. Like some of the more interesting ones, we're going to be revealing soon, so stay tuned.
I'll definitely be looking forward to that. One of the things that I was definitely wondering about is in the demo, the gameplay is kind of broken into two sections. You have the platforming section, and then you have the sort of arena section that's more focused on defending the actual area and building up your towers. And are there going to be enemies like integrated into the normal platform sections? What's the real kind of a split? How much of the game are you going to be platforming and exploring, and how much of the game are you going to be stuck in one area trying to defend things and hold off wave after wave of bad guys?
Right. So I think we're really taking a very like Legend of Zelda approach to how we're designing our game. So there'll be these really big sections where you're exploring, but mostly like the game is teaching you how to use your new ability or like new item that we've just given you, right? So you have to solve a variety of different puzzles. You have to fight off like many smaller skirmishes, just so that we can show you how creative you can be with, you know, the different tools we give the player. And then rather than having like a boss like Zelda would, we have these tower defense sections, sometimes can look like bosses, where you kind of really have to show that you've mastered those skills.
That's something I was really wondering about, because you can't really take the towers on the move along with you. So when you're playing with the platform section, your tower builder, he can't really do a whole lot of stuff. Is there going to be some kind of, I know you talked about the idea of the kobolds that you can build that can run along with you. Is he going to be more focused on being a bit more mobile as you go throughout development?
Yeah, I definitely think he has a variety of skills that really lend themselves to the puzzle solving element. So not so much the combat as you were suggesting, but you know, just like almost like basic physics puzzles where you have to like press down multiple buttons using his block in order to, you know, open a gate or whatever. Like that's kind of the most basic early puzzle we have where we're exploring and when we're in the exploration phase. So yeah, he's got a lot of different abilities that I think lend to the puzzle side.
That's good to hear. He does have multiple kinds of blocks he can actually make. He can make normal blocks and make hover blocks. So it'll be interesting. It'll be nice to see how those integrate together into working with the platform sections instead of just trying to build a wall to protect your turrets from being destroyed.
Right.
So one of the things that really stood out to me for your game is its artwork. And its artwork, in my opinion, is really freaking awesome. What were some of the inspirations behind the specific artwork style you decided to go with? Because it is very pixelated, but it's also very detailed at the exact same time, which is not something that you always see working together.
Right. So, you know, I'm actually writing a really long blog post about this right now, and all of the art kind of stemmed from Bart's original like design. And Bart was really kind of influenced by Final Fantasy's reoccurring character Sid, especially from like Final Fantasy 2 and 6. So going from there, that's how we kind of came up with Clu. We just color swapped her actually, color swapped Bart. And then some of the other influences for like the environments in the game are like Sword and Sorcery and Super Time Force. In terms of like the overall tone and style, we mentioned that we really wanted it to feel like a Miyazaki film, and you know, that's kind of turned into a few other things, but that's a lot of the inspiration.
Well, I really liked it, and, you know, the environments themselves are pretty detailed, the characters work well, and everything really fits well with its ambient sort of music to try to make a nice environment. How many different environments are there going to be? Do you have a specific idea of how many environments there are, or are we still too early in the project to have a concrete number of like how many levels or different places we'll actually go throughout the game?
Right, so we actually have mapped out the entire kind of story for the game and what those different areas for the story would be, along with what those scenarios are. So I guess I can pretty concretely say that there are at least 7, and that those areas are pretty big, and we might be adding 1 or 2 more that might be a little bit smaller. But that seems to be the scope of the game right now, about 7 to 8 areas.
So I would guess, since you did mention boss fights, the areas would be broken up with a boss fight in between. But would there be multiple defense sections within the same levels, or is each level going to be focused around there's going to be a platform area that then leads to a defense area?
So in certain levels, where we're teaching the player about like a new kind of form of tower defense, for example, like in the trailer we show using an elevator against these like spider enemies. There'll be like kind of mini sections where you have to fight off like maybe 1 or 2 waves, just to show the player like, oh, like from now on it's going to be about activating these different moving platforms, or activating these weapons that can be useful to me when we're playing these tower defense sections, and not just straight up trying to fight them all off as we do in the demo.
So why tower defense? There have been a lot of tower defense games that have come out in the past. It's a very popular and populated genre. What were your decisions to actually go with that specific genre for this game, even though you do mix things up?
Right. I think tower defense kind of gets a bad rap from core gamers for being too casual. And I think that's because that a lot of tower defense games don't really go outside the box enough. But if you think about it, like MOBAs, which are kind of hugely popular among core gamers and everybody, is just another form of tower defense. So like the basic premise of defending something and attacking enemies, I think there's so much room to explore with that concept, and we think it's fun, so we're gonna run with it.
Now, earlier in the interview, you mentioned that the game will have some form of co-op. Is that going to be online, local, or both?
So we definitely wanted to put local co-op as a very low stretch goal, relatively speaking, on our Kickstarter, because we're really excited about it, especially for like our horde mode, where you and a friend could just kind of sit down and take on these huge challenges. And especially since we're going to have like Shovel Knight in the game, like we've been playtesting that internally, and he's super fun. So we're excited about those features. In terms of online, that's something that we've been talking to a lot of other indie developers about, and seeing like how difficult it is to implement on different consoles or across different consoles. And it's something that we have to put a higher price tag on, just because we don't have enough experience with it to know if we can do it well. We definitely have implemented it in smaller forms before in our previous games, but not really on this scale. So long story short is we definitely want to, absolutely. We just need to make sure we have enough funding to possibly hire someone else to make sure it works well.
Now, you bringing up Shovel Knight led me to an interesting question of if there will be other characters you can choose from when you're in the co-op, and what those characters would be, like if they would just be a palette swap of the characters that already exist, or if they would actually have their own stats and their own things to work around them.
Right, so Shovel Knight is in our game, and he has his original moveset from the the Wii U and 3DS Shovel Knight games. So he has the pogo jump, and he has the shovel move, and it's actually really fun to just like pogo all the enemies and never land in our game. And we do have other characters who are appearing, who we'll be announcing soon. Some of them are mere color swaps, but just alternate skins. For example, we have some for Clu where it has the exact same moves, but just looks like a different character. And then we also have some classes like Monk and Assassin, which we talk about a little bit on our Kickstarter page, that we originally wanted to have in this game for sure. But we just decided that in order to make sure we can deliver on everything we're saying that we're delivering, we're not going to include those immediately with release, or it will depend on how much funding we get, if we can kind of hire more people to help us.
Will you be able to pick these characters for the main game, or would these only be specifically for multiplayer play sessions?
Got it. So most of those characters are only going to be featured in our Horde mode, or in New Game Plus, where we kind of throw story out the window, because otherwise the story of the game is very important to us, and it's really about the relationship between Bart and Clu.
Now, you did bring up the Horde mode and the fact that is co-op going to be specifically for just Horde mode, or is co-op going to also be in the single player?
Co-op is also in the single player, or not single player. Co-op is also in the story campaign.
Right. Well, I guess that makes sense. Would it be the single player if it's co-op?
Right. Yes.
So, Aegis Defenders is the first game for Team Guts, or Guts Department, right?
That's correct.
You guys have worked on previous games on your own then, such as a project I came across called Bloom, which I actually downloaded and played a while back, and I was surprised to find that you guys actually worked on it, since that game was really, really awesome. I enjoyed my time with that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
It's good to see that you're working your way up to getting bigger and bigger projects, because I really feel, depending upon what I played of Bloom, you have a really good chance to do pretty well with Aegis Defenders.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, Lifu and I met while working on that project, and you know, it went so well that we decided to keep going together.
Yeah, I was surprised to find that it was a college project, because it felt like it was like just a beta version for what's going to eventually have been a full game.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking to various publishers about bringing that game to consoles, and you know, the team for that was huge. I was the art director, and I worked with about 30 different artists from around the world, just to get all the art for that game. Granted, they mostly were kind of nickeling and diming the thing, because no one has time when they're working for free. So, you know, that's how it goes.
So what platforms can we expect to see Aegis on when it does finally release?
So we're definitely going to be on PC hopefully through Steam. We're doing pretty well on Greenlight, Mac, and we're looking into Linux right now. We're working through Unity, like we mentioned before. So it's not too hard to port, but it's just one of those things that we're still looking into. Our stretch goals for the campaign are PS4 at 100,000 and Wii U at 150. And we've already been talking to Sony and Nintendo, and you know, getting dev kits and whatnot. So hopefully we can reach those stretch goals, because I would love to be on those platforms.
I could see some interesting things going on with the game on something like the Wii U, when you have the extra pad involved to try to help around with some multiplayer aspect or something like that. So that could be interesting to see. Do you have any ideas of a price point for the game yet, or is it still too early to go to something like that?
Well, internally we've only always been saying $15, so I'm not sure why that would change. So $15.
Do you have anything that you would like to go over or talk about before we wrap things up?
Not really. I think that pretty much covers it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for talking to me today, Bryce. Do you guys have contacts, a Facebook, a website, a Twitter that people could use to keep track of the game's progress?
Of course. If you go to aegisdefenders.com, that's spelled AEGIS, and then defenders.com, you can reach our Kickstarter and all our various social media.
All right, well, thank you once again for joining me today, Bryce, talking about your game Aegis Defenders, currently for a Kickstarter by Guts Department. Thank you all you viewers for watching today. If you have any interest in this game at all, please do follow the links in the description of this video to go check out its Kickstarter page. And keep in mind that Kickstarter games don't get made unless they get funded, so if you want to play this game, you gotta help get them made. I'm a MegapieMan, and I will talk to you guys later.